An absolute stunner to start out of the Christmas break. The Canucks collapse and fall 5-4 in overtime to the Seattle Kraken. Let's break it down on Rink Wide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside the Rink Wide Vancouver studios in the lower lobby of the Wall Center Hotel. Our first live stream since the Christmas break here. Hope you had a great time with your family and friends getting back to the formalities of hockey. How do you enjoy life without Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson? A shameful final 5 minutes of the third period, and more of the same in overtime as the Seattle Kraken come to town and hand the Canucks a 5-4 setback in overtime, a game the Canucks were in full control of, up 4-1 as time wound down on the clock high above center ice, but it is a 60-minute game. In this case, it was 62 minutes and 15 seconds. Give the Kraken credit for not going quietly. They snap a 5-game losing streak. They had struggled to generate offense. They found their way in the late stages of the third period, and then it was Vince Dunn with his second of the hockey game in OT at the 2:15 mark. That's the dagger. That's the ball game. Kraken 5, Canucks 4, and this Vancouver Canucks team that has really taken one step forward, one step back so often through this season. Well, they outdid themselves in this one. Not the way they wanted to start out of the holiday break, but it is what it is, as they say. And they've given us lots to talk about here on Rink Wide, which is brought to you in part by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you open an account. Now, if you're a regular with us here on Rink Wide, you know all about the Super Chat function. It's your chance to get a comment or a question through to us here on the show, and it goes to a great cause. Partial proceeds are going to go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. A little different format for you here on Rink Wide. As you can see, it's just me. Happy holidays. You know how hard it is to find good help at this time of the year. So it's a solo episode, but I want you to be a participant. And we always say that. I've got lots of thoughts, believe me. We haven't even started to break this thing down. Lots to get to, but I want to hear from you as well. And as you can imagine, the YouTube live chat is hopping, and certainly we will dip in and get some of your thoughts on this hockey game. Where did it go wrong for the Vancouver Canucks? Where to begin? I mean, it looked like they had a 5-1 lead when Dakota Joshua thought he had scored his third of the season. That just kind of looked like it was going to be gravy, to use a phrase that sort of seems fitting for the season here. Whatever. Goals reviewed, doesn't count. Still 4-1, and the Canucks are in full control of this hockey game. Did I mention the fact that the Kraken don't score very often? They had lost 5 in a row coming in with just 6 goals scored. So where did this offense come from? Well, the Canucks had held it together reasonably well without Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. Their 2 leading scorers coming into this game, missing action for the first time together in their National Hockey League careers. Canucks, since Pettersson got into the league and since Hughes joined them, those two had never missed the same game. But we're wondering if we'll get any sort of update from Rick Tocchet postgame here about the extent of the injuries, the nature of the injuries. We know that Hughes was questionable, but did play and played well against San Jose, and then wasn't at practice on Friday, and Elias Pettersson left the game against the Sharks after scoring twice. He wasn't at practice. So is this just a one-off? Are they going to be ready for the Canucks' next game on New Year's Eve in Calgary? Or are they going to have to try to find a way to get by here without 2 of their top players? And, oh yeah, it's not just Quinn Hughes missing on the back end. Filip Hronek obviously out of the lineup as well. So the Canucks without their top 2 defensemen, and unfortunately it showed in the late stages. No composure, no precision, no ability to get pucks out, no ability to defend the guts of the ice, as Rick Tocchet always talks about. Didn't help that Thatcher Demko was not his sharpest. You look at a couple of the goals that got in. The first one by Matty Beniers from distance, just kind of whiffed on it. And the Jaden Schwartz goal, I still need to see, did it deflect off Demko? Did it go off Noah Juleson? Whatever the case, from a sharp angle, that started the comeback with 4 minutes and 45 seconds to go. Schwartz from the corner. Now it's 4-2. And the Kraken, they're still down a pair, but they've got a little bit of life. And then Vince Dunn, an inexcusable giveaway by Carson Soucy. Noah Juleson doesn't make a great play on the puck, kind of handcuffs Soucy. Soucy hands it to Dunn, and Vince Dunn just getting warmed up at that point. And then, with 48 seconds to go, Jaden Schwartz out of the corner. Tyler Myers defending a pass that never comes and backs up to the back post and basically just paves a way for Schwartz to get to the front of the net. Schwartz then is able to tuck it past Demko, ties this game. And at that point, if you're the Canucks, you're thinking, like, just get to overtime. Like, this thing can't get away entirely. It almost did. But it did go to OT, and then Tyler Myers with a pass to nobody. Unfortunately, it landed on the stick of Vince Dunn, who was off to the races on a breakaway. He makes no mistake, beats Demko for his second of the game, 7th of the season, and at 2:15, that was it. Curtains for the Vancouver Canucks, who fall 5-4 in overtime. The Canucks still don't have consecutive home ice wins. They beat San Jose before Christmas, and they were minutes away from stringing together back-to-back wins on home ice in front of the paying customers for the first time all season, and they still can't get that right. And now they don't play a home game until they host Nashville after a quick 2-game road trip. So if the Canucks are going to win back-to-back games on home ice, it's not going to happen until the middle of January, because after the national game, the national game's a one-off, and then they're out on the road for 5. Incredible. I mean, if there's a statistic that speaks to the inconsistency of the Vancouver Canucks, and we've all watched this season unfold 35 games in now, they haven't been able to win back-to-back games on home ice, and that still stands as they give this one. Credit to the Kraken. They snapped their losing streak. 2 teams out there both looking for the win, but the Canucks served this one up on a Christmas platter. Inexcusable. And the struggles of this team in overtime, like, my head hurts trying to figure out why the Vancouver Canucks are so bad when it comes to 3-on-3 overtime. Now, I get it. No Quinn Hughes. That's going to make life difficult. No Elias Pettersson. But he's got, he set up Jake DeBrusk for an overtime goal in Detroit, but other than that, hasn't factored in the scoring in overtime, but still, you'd prefer to have him out there over some of the candidates that got a little bit of ice time in overtime. The Vancouver Canucks have now lost their last 5 trips to overtime. That's 5 points flushed. There's a bonus point up for grab every time you get to OT, and the Vancouver Canucks, who are trying to make hay in the Pacific Division and the Western Conference instead, they find themselves clinging to a wildcard spot. Part of it is because they just keep flushing these points. When games go beyond regulation time, now 3-7 in games settled in overtime, plus a shootout loss to the Philadelphia Flyers in the early going this year, they are 3-8 in games that require extra hockey. 3-8. They've won 3, but they have lost 8. They have let 8 bonus points get away. Now, you're not going to win every game that goes to overtime, but if you take the 8, even if they had won half of those games, like, there's 4 more points for the Vancouver Canucks in the standings. And what would 4 points mean to them? Well, they'd be well above the wild card spot. They'd be right there in the thick of things. Vegas starting to pull away in the Pacific Division. If you haven't checked the standings, we'll do that a little bit later on. But 4 more points for the Vancouver Canucks. They would be keeping tabs with the Edmonton Oilers, with the Los Angeles Kings, who, by the way, going head-to-head this afternoon. And so the Canucks keeping an eye on that one. Los Angeles defeats the Edmonton Oilers 4-3 in overtime. So both of those teams getting points. The Canucks keep pace with Edmonton, but Los Angeles picks up an extra point on both of those teams by virtue of a win at home. So if you're the Vancouver Canucks, it started so well. It was going to be tough without Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, obviously. And we wondered, like, what does this defense look like without Quinn Hughes? Well, I was there at practice on Friday. I saw with my own 2 eyes. The minute that they had Derek Forbort paired with Tyler Myers, you got a sense that this wasn't Forbort as a stand-in for Quinn Hughes, that they were electing to go with 2 of their biggest bodies on the back end, and we're going to try to patchwork this defense. And again, through 45, through 55 minutes of hockey, they were getting away with it against a Seattle team that struggles. And you just thought, get it across the finish line. Take the 2 points and move on. But nope. Canucks authors of their own demise. Again, Thatcher Demko I didn't think was particularly sharp. And then you look at some of the guys that were going to be required to log big minutes. Carson Soucy was having a nice afternoon. Like, the pass that he made to Brock Besser for his second of 2 goals in this hockey game made you forget about Quinn Hughes for a sec. Maybe not. But still, it was a terrific pass onto the stick of Besser. A one-timer cross crease, and that was the goal that made it 3-1 after 2 periods of play. So this is the second time this year now, opening it against Calgary, the Canucks had a 4-1 lead and couldn't make it hold up. And here they had a 4-1 lead with 5 minutes to play and couldn't make it hold up. They get to overtime in both of those games, but still. And even go back the game before Christmas against San Jose, it was 4-1 in the third period. And the Sharks scored twice. They ran out of time there, but they outplayed and outscored the Canucks in the third. And I even track it back to that game in Ottawa at the start of that 6-game road trip not that long ago when Quinn Hughes got turfed early. The Canucks had a 4-1 lead in that game. And Ottawa scored twice late and continued to apply pressure. And the Canucks were able to win that one by a score of 4-3. But, this isn't an isolated incident here. That too many times we have seen the Canucks get to third periods with leads and they haven't been able to make them stand up. And part of it is they back off. They backed off against San Jose the other night. And here, again, there is no excuse. I'm really interested to hear what Rick Tocchet has to say. We'll try to bring you some quotes from the head coach as his team absolutely flushes away a victory here. And yeah, they get a single point, but this is a point loss. This is not any sort of point gain for Seattle. It's 2 points gained because it looked like they were going to get nothing out of this hockey game. Instead, they're heading back home, and they see the Canucks in a couple of games. Canucks are in Calgary on New Year's Eve and then in Seattle at Climate Pledge on the 2nd of January to open the new year. So if you're Seattle, this is going to be fresh in your mind. Hopefully for the Canucks, it'll be fresh in their mind as well. But talk about a confidence boost for a Seattle team that hasn't been scoring many goals of late. And they leave town with 5 goals and a 5-4 overtime victory. All right, let's get to the 3 stars of this hockey game. Man, did these change as the afternoon went along. We had all 3 Canucks spots at one point, and then we had to change. And we did do that. In the end, we have settled on the fact that Vince Dunn, with 2 goals, including the winner, also had an assist. So he's in on 3 of 5 goals for the Seattle Thunderbirds, the Seattle Kraken. Who knows how the Canucks would have fared against the Seattle T-Birds, but they were facing the Kraken. Got junior hockey on my mind these days. But Vince Dunn is the first star. Jaden Schwartz, 2 goals, 7 shots on goal, and he is one of the guys that they look to for offense. Hasn't had enough of it this season. 11 goals now on the year, but his 11th tied this game at 4, got it to overtime. And Brock Boeser was riding high as the first star of this hockey game for the longest time, but impossible to give any Canuck first or second star honors. They're all culpable in this thing. It's a team game, and it just wasn't good enough. But it is good to see Boeser scoring again. Opens the scoring on a power play, loose change in front of the net. Philip Grubauer, one of his better saves of the afternoon, off Jake DeBrusk. Nice setup from JT Miller, and there was Boeser in front of the net. Scores to make it 1-0 for the Canucks after the first. Just a sluggish first period. Maybe that's to do with the fact that first game out of the Christmas break, each team practiced here in Vancouver on Friday. Found them took a little time for them to find their skating legs. Canucks came out of the first period with a 1-0 lead. And then they see Seattle open the second with that long-distance shot by Matty Beniers that we talked about. Not a great goal on Thatcher Demko, but I like the response of the Vancouver Canucks. Garland and Boeser with his second of the afternoon, the one that we talked about from Soucy. With 5 minutes to go in the second period, Brock Boeser gives the Canucks a 3-1 lead, and you think, all right, that's probably enough, given the way that Seattle has just really had an uphill battle putting pucks in the net. So Boeser scores twice in the afternoon. Certainly will give him the nod as the third star in this hockey game. And I guess if there's honorable mention, let's get to Jake DeBrusk. Nice goal to start the third period. Takes the pass from Miller just inside the Seattle line. Up top on the short side on Grubauer, his 16th goal of the year. For a guy that opened the year without a goal in the first 9, really since November 1st, Jake DeBrusk has been red hot and up to 16 now before the midway mark of the season in his 500th game as well. So a salute to Jake DeBrusk. 500 NHL games, that's a nice milestone. This should have been 400 for Quinn Hughes. That's going to have to wait. He'll get there, but wasn't able to play in his 400th game. But for Jake DeBrusk, 500th game, a goal, and an assist. So, doing his part here, trying at least to do his part, wasn't enough for the Vancouver Canucks as they lose 5-4 to the Seattle Kraken. So there you go. Those are the 3 stars. Vince Dunn, along with Jaden Schwartz and Brock Besser. All right, we got ourselves a super chat, and it's coming from Cole. If you're watching along on YouTube, you can see it there at the bottom of the screen. Canucks fan from Newfoundland here after all the drama around this team starting to take its toll on the enjoyment of watching these games. Change is needed, especially on D. Well, Cole, we appreciate your contribution here both to the show and to the BC Mental Health Foundation, so it's all going to a good cause. Change. I mean, look, this has been the biggest topic of conversation all season long on Rink Wide, on all the shows and all the stories that are written about the Vancouver Canucks, Canucks Army, and elsewhere, this need for an upgrade on defense. And then you take Quinn Hughes unexpectedly out of the lineup, and obviously that changes the dynamic. Not good enough. First game without Quinn Hughes, and they end up giving up 5 goals. A couple of them that you'd like to think that Demko would stop way more often than not, but that was the kind of afternoon it was. Pucks went in on him. The guys in front of him, not good enough. So the roster freeze is over, and I think we're all waiting to see here if Quinn Hughes is going to miss any significant amount of time. If he does, then absolutely, I think you have to look at the front office and think, okay, it is go time. You've been accruing cap space. Maybe you didn't want to be put in this position of having to act now, but something's got to give because, look, they're in a stretch right now. San Jose before Christmas, scuffling Seattle team. Calgary doesn't score a lot of goals. Then they see Seattle again and then Nashville. After that, though, they head out on the road for 5. Trip starts in Montreal, and then it gets really tough, really quickly. Carolina and Toronto back-to-back. They see Washington. Trip finishes in Winnipeg, and then they come home, and they've got Edmonton coming in here. That's a really difficult stretch for the Vancouver Canucks. So, again, still not sure what's going on as far as Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. We'll wait to see if we get any sort of update from Rick Tocchet post-game in this hockey game or after this hockey game. Whatever the case, that's going to be difficult for the coaching staff if they think that they can get through with a patchwork defense. I mean, a little bit of good news on Friday afternoon with Rick Tocchet revealing that Filip Hronek is back on skates a month after whatever procedure he had on his lower body, obviously resting the upper body. So body's taking a beating there for Phil Hronek, but the minute that news got out, like I had people in my mentions, does that mean he's playing? No. The fact he's back skating is positive because he's been a month, but Rick Tocchet said, basically just on track, 8 weeks was the estimate the Canucks gave. That would put him, his time frame, early February, and if he's not back by the 8th of February, then there's a 2-week bonus cushion with the Four Nations face-off. So I'm not even sure that we see Filip Hronek back before that tournament. And at that point, you hope that he's fully healthy and rested up for the stretch run. But where will this team be? They've got 20 games now between now and the start of the Four Nations face-off. And as we just outlined, a stretch that'll allow them to breathe and hopefully get some results because then they're going to be up against it. All right, we got another super chat. This one coming from Blue Line Bar Down. Time for a coaching change. You going to pin this on the coach today? I have trouble with that. They score 4 goals. People have been freaking out about the fact they don't score goals, and they dump and chase. They got 4 goals. Scored a power play goal. Went 1 for 2 on the power play. Rick Tocchet wasn't out there on the ice in the final 5 minutes. That's on the goaltender to make some saves in crunch time. And then on veteran defensemen, whether it's Tyler Myers in overtime, whether it's Carson Soucy, Derek Forbort was out there for the tying goal along with Myers. You're not asking these guys to be heroes. But these guys have all logged a lot of games in the National Hockey League. Just man up, make the right play in the big moment, and you're not in this predicament. And so I'm not going to bang the drum that this loss is on the coach. We saw a coaching change on Boxing Day in Detroit. Derek Lalonde is out. Todd McClellan back in the coaching biz. Got his lunch handed to him in his debut by the Toronto Maple Leafs. I bring that up because I'm always curious when there are coaching changes around the National Hockey League. Rick Tocchet hasn't been on the job 2 full years yet. Mid-January marks the 2-year anniversary for Rick Tocchet. Rick Tocchet is now 10th in the NHL in tenure, which just tells you how disposable coaches are. And so while I sit here and say, this one wasn't on the coach, this is the reigning coach of the year. This is management's pick. And this guy's done a terrific job for the most part. But it is such a volatile gig with zero security. And when they say coaches are hired to be fired, I mean, that we do a stat that stands out. We'll do one a little bit later on here, but not even 2 years on the job, and Rick Tocchet is into the top 10 in tenure in the National Hockey League. Coaches are chewed up and spat out all the time. And so, crazier things have happened around hockey. But when you think of the adversity that the Canucks have been through, the players that they have missed, the things that Rick Tocchet has had to deal with in the first half of the season, the fact that his team remains a wild card team is pretty remarkable, all things considered. And I asked him about that after practice yesterday, if he was content with the fact that they were in a wild card spot, even though, at this time last year they were leading the division and on their way to a regular season division title. He said content, no, but he was proud of his guys. I don't know how proud he is of them this afternoon after this one, but even with the overtime loss, the Canucks retain their hold on the top wild card spot in the West for the time being. The Canucks are now 17-10-8 on the season. They have 42 points. The home record remains an issue. It's now 7-7-6. Like, if they lose their next home game beyond regulation, they go 7-7-7. We'll worry about the next one when it gets here. But you do the math there. At 7-7-6, that is 7 wins and 13 losses. It's 7 wins in 20 games in front of the home fans, which is just, that part's garbage. For a team that was so good on home ice last season, that's a terrible home ice record. And it's a big reason why this team is below the top 3 in the Pacific and clinging to a wild card spot as we sit here. So, time for coaching change? I'm going to say no, not just yet, but I will look at that overtime record and think that it has to be better. Quite simply, it has to be better. And you can't throw a blanket over overtime and think, all right, this is the problem. This is why the Canucks don't have success in overtime. Every overtime is different. I mean, the game in Utah went to the dying seconds. I think there were 13 seconds left. And everybody pointed at JT Miller staying out late and didn't have anything for the back check. Then they come back off the road. Ottawa 13 seconds into overtime. Sometimes it's you don't get a save. Sometimes it's you don't convert on your chances at the other end. This one, the Canucks didn't have any chances in overtime. The shots were 2-1 in favor of the Kraken. Just back to Tocchet for a sec. I mean, this comes down to systems because it does feel like every game the Vancouver Canucks play, they have a period like they did in the third period. Not where they give up as many goals as they did, but the Canucks up 3-1 and then make it 4-1. They get outshot 12-5 in the third period. How many periods? Like Boston came in, outshot them 16-4 in the first period. We have seen all sorts of periods. Columbus, the 17-2 in the first period. Like, it feels like every game there's a period where the Canucks get absolutely stuffed on the shot clock. And this was no exception this afternoon. And so, that's an area I think that you can look at. That's part of the systems here, that this team does sit back, maybe gets a little overconfident. And yet we've seen that they struggle to protect leads. So why they would be overconfident is beyond me. But all I know is that the Vancouver Canucks were the better team for 55 minutes and got what they deserved in the end with the way that they defended in the final 5, and they lose by a score of 5-4. Keep the feedback coming to the Great Clips inbox. We'll continue to work in as many of your thoughts and comments as we can with more than 4,400 hair salons throughout the United States and Canada. Great Clips, the world's largest hair salon brand, official hair salon of the NHL. I feel like pulling my hair out after watching this hockey club. Let this one get away. More information, check out greatclips.com. Great Clips, it's going to be great. It was not great for the Vancouver Canucks, far from it. At the end of this hockey game, I guess if you're looking for positives, the fact that Brock Besser is scoring now. He has goals in 3 straight games for the first time this season. 5 goals in those 3 games, and he's up to 13 on the year. So season interrupted by the head injury in Los Angeles. Took him a little while to sort of get that scorer's touch back again, but he can't get that time back that he missed, but he's on a 30-ish goal pace, and this is a guy that we know scores in bunches, and he's riding a hot streak right now, so we'll see if he can continue that. I like the Connor Garland goal a lot. I like the pass from Teddy Bluger up the gut. Garland shielding the puck to create a little space for himself, and then he fakes the shot an awful lot, and this time he used it, goes 5-hole on the breakaway. Not a play that you see an awful lot, but it was effective for Garland. That made it 2-1, so it extended the Canucks' lead. He stepped out of the penalty box. Canucks benefited from the fact that the Seattle Kraken on the power play are an absolute disaster. The Kraken on the afternoon had 3 power plays, so they had 6 minutes of power play time. They had 1 shot on goal. And Garland was in the box, got tangled up with Daniel Sprong, old buddy Daniel Sprong, got called for holding midway through the second period, and then he steps out of the box. Soucy knocks the puck down, and then Bluger springs Garland on the breakaway. For Connor Garland, that snapped a 12-game goal drought. He hadn't scored since overtime in Buffalo when he was spinning around and breakdancing in the crease there and putting the puck between his legs. And he had 2 that day. He had the backdoor tap-in on the power play and the overtime winner. For as good as Garland has been all season, and the hustle and the determination and everything else, just his second 5-on-5 goal in the last 2 months. He has scored overtime goals at 3-on-3. He scored power play goals at 5-on-4. He scored an empty netter in Boston at 5-on-6. 5-on-5, it's been a struggle for him, and not just him. A lot of the Canucks' top-end guys have really been challenged at 5-on-5 this year, but it's just funny because Garland, he looks effective every shift, battling and hustling and all that, but there just hasn't been a bottom line when it comes to him 5-on-5. All of that said, without Hughes and Pettersson in the lineup, Connor Garland was the Canucks' leading scorer coming into this hockey game, and maybe that was part of the reason that he wore an A along with Tyler Myers. Hughes, obviously the captain, they didn't replace him. Didn't think they would, even temporarily. But with Pettersson out as well, 2 guys that wear letters, so JT Miller had his A. Tyler Myers has worn an A in the past. We've seen that before. But I saw a lot of chatter in social spaces about Connor Garland getting an A instead of Brock Besser, and this was disrespectful to Besser, and that this clearly was an indication that the organization has moved on from Brock Besser, and boy, a trade can only be imminent here. I'm not prepared to go that far. I don't want to turn this into any sort of drama or soap opera. Connor Garland was their leading scorer. So the fact that they slapped an A on him for a game, I get that Besser is more of a veteran, has been through the battles, up over 500 games in the National Hockey League. And if they had gone to Besser, fine. But I just don't have an issue, and I don't want to make this an issue. But I was surprised at sort of how much chatter there was in social spaces. Maybe I shouldn't have been. It's Twitter after all. Whatever the case, it was Garland and it was Myers that wore the letters for the Vancouver Canucks in this hockey game. All right, let's get to the stat that stands out. We talked about it earlier. I want to get there now. And again, this was one that changed as we worked our way throughout the afternoon. But this just sort of amplifies everything that you watched with the Vancouver Canucks in this hockey game. Seattle had not scored more than 2 goals in any of their 5 consecutive losses coming into this one. They're down 4-1 in the third. They score 3 goals in a 5-minute span. This team that couldn't find the net to save its life in most of its games recently. And all of a sudden they explode for 3 goals in 5 minutes when they hadn't scored more than 2 in any of their 5 consecutive losses. So the losing streak comes to an end. Still haven't had a regulation win in a while, but they're not going to worry about that. They're going to take these 2 points, feel good about themselves, and we'll see what they can do if they can back it up, if this is momentum for the Seattle Kraken and for the Vancouver Canucks. A little bit of time off here now before they play again on New Year's Eve in Calgary against the Flames. Want to take a moment to tell you about Greta Bar, YVR. We always talk about Greta here on the program. You hear us talking about it every episode, and hopefully if you had a chance to check it out, if you have, you know what we're talking about. If you haven't, well, you're missing out on all of the big screens, the arcade games, the terrific new street food menu, weekly drink specials. Had our first Canucks Army watch party of the season there in October. I am told that there's another one in the works, although I haven't seen a date yet. So stay tuned for that, but hopefully you can join us. Pop by there, came back to the studio to watch the game and do Rink Wide. There's even some talk about doing Rink Wide live on location. So, we'll keep you informed as we work through that. But we'll have more Canucks Army watch parties as this season moves along. Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. The chat's kind of gone sideways again. I know that people are pointing out that Besser wore an A when Miller was on his personal leave, so we've seen that. And I don't even want to go down this road. I don't think that this was an indictment of the leadership job that Brock Besser did. I think this was recognizing the hustle and determination and consistency of Connor Garland and the fact that he was the scoring leader coming into this game. Now, I am curious to see what happens when they get out on the road. Is it any kind of rotation here? But that is all, it's all going to be dependent on how long both Hughes and Pettersson are out of the lineup for the Vancouver Canucks. So, we'll see. We'll see if it's an emerging story. Rick Tocchet saying after the game he's not sure on the timelines for either Hughes or Pettersson. That doesn't instill a ton of confidence in me that these guys are going to be back for the next game or maybe even the next couple of games. So buckle up and get used to life without Quinn Hughes, who's having a season for the ages, and absolutely they missed him. You know that he would have played a lot in the third period, and when Quinn Hughes plays, he spends so much time up ice. That's how he defends. That's what makes him successful. So the Kraken likely wouldn't have had a chance to generate the offense that they did in the third period. If Quinn Hughes is out there every other shift defending the lead, he's got the puck on his stick, he's up ice, he's doing his thing, and he's helping the Canucks be that much better. So we're going to hear from Jake DeBrusk here in a second, and I am curious to hear post-game remarks from any Canucks. I know Rick talked about, I saw one quote that, and they let it slip away and it hurts, and it should. They have to be better. The other thing is, and we had this statistic after the Ottawa game last Saturday, recent Saturdays haven't been very kind to the Canucks or their fans. Boston came in, drilled the Canucks. Ottawa came to town, beat the Canucks. Seattle comes to town. Well, matinee hockey, and they beat the Vancouver Canucks. The other common denominator in those three losses, that the visiting team scored 5, which has just become such a regular thing. And I believe that's the 8th time already this season in 20 home games that the Canucks have given up 5. Like, it's impossible. You're not going to win. When you're giving up 5 on the regular, you're not going to win. And as a result, the Canucks have 7 wins in 20 tries on home ice this season. And part of that is keeping the puck out of their net. All right, we talked about him earlier. He was honorable mention in our 3 stars, had a goal and an assist in his 500th NHL game. But he'll remember it, I'm sure, for the wrong reasons. Here's Jake DeBrusk after a 5-4 loss in overtime to the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's pretty devastating. We should never be losing that game, let alone letting it get to overtime. But it just goes to show, there's a couple bad balances and, resilient team over there, obviously. You got to give them credit. But it just reinforces the focus we have to have no matter what the score is. But in saying that, we have to stick together in here as a team. We're all going through it together, and there's different parts of the game that they didn't score on that they could have. But anytime that we have a 2-0 lead there late, that's got to be automatic, and that's what we're pushing for, obviously.
How frustrating is that as well, in light of the fact that you guys played a pretty good 55 minutes without 2 of your top players in the lineup?
Yeah, I thought the guys, were prepared for the game, and I thought that we did our, game plan that, there are a couple things, but for the most part, like you said, decent, but it's hard to say anything good after it ends like that. So, you just kind of move on from that, but in saying that, take the lessons of how this feels and make sure it never happens again.
Emotionally, though, how difficult is it, given what you guys have been through? There's been a lot of adversity this season to not be able to close that out. Is it, bigger than a regular loss on some levels?
It might feel like that from the outside, but in saying that, I think it's one of those things where we obviously have lots of pride in our games, and when things don't go right or when there's mistakes and breakdowns and things like that, guys feel it. they wear it on their sleeve in this room, and that's why we've been able to deal with adversities, because guys obviously care and are proud. But those are all nice things to say at this point. It's pretty much a sprint till the Four Nations, and we need all the points we can get, especially in our division. In terms of how it feels, it just doesn't necessarily feel like a normal loss. But in saying that, it's not dire. We got a game in, I think, 2 days, and if we don't regroup quickly, it's one of those things where this league doesn't wait for anybody.
There you go. Jake DeBrusk, generally a pretty upbeat and positive guy. You can tell this one hurt. He didn't want to come right out and say that it's devastating that it's going to sink their season, and it shouldn't. I mean, if they're a resilient bunch, then they will relish the opportunity to try to bounce back on New Year's Eve in Calgary. And they get a bit of a break here from the schedule, in that the Canucks are done now on this Saturday afternoon. The Flames play tonight in San Jose, on Sunday in Vegas, and then have to hustle home, and the game on Tuesday will be 3 games in 4 nights for them. So if you're the Vancouver Canucks, they'll be back on the practice ice on Sunday. I think they may skate Monday as well before they travel, and then get out there and take on the Flames. So, Calgary's in San Jose. The game in Vegas back-to-back is going to be difficult for them. And if you're the Canucks, you should be spitting fire when puck drops at the Saddle Dome on Tuesday night. Now, Calgary, 3 points back of the Canucks. So we'll see how they fare in these 2 games out on the road. 16-11-7. They're 12-4-1 on home. Where we've talked about the Canucks and their struggles with 7 home ice wins. Calgary's one of the top teams in the National Hockey League, even in that dumpy barn of theirs that's going to be replaced here in a couple of years. They still have to play at the Saddle Dome for a couple more seasons. Jonathan Huberdeau, Nazem Kadri tied for the team lead, 13 goals apiece. Huberdeau leads the Flames. He's got 25 points. Dustin Wolf and Dan Vladar have both provided pretty good goaltending. The Canucks have seen Vladar twice. They haven't seen Wolf yet. We'll see how their goaltending breaks down. Wolf has considerably better numbers. You'll remember, in the wake of this loss against Seattle, Calgary stormed back to beat the Canucks 6-5 in overtime on opening night. Canucks were 3-1 winners on November the 12th. Both of those games played in Vancouver. Now, this will make my boss at Canucks Army Quads happy, because it'll be another opportunity to watch Rasmus Andersson on defense for the Calgary Flames, and he can dare to dream that someday Andersson may switch teams and come to Vancouver. The other thing, and I don't even know if he'll play on Tuesday, how about Andrei Kuzmenko sitting on 1 goal through 28 games? This guy scored 39 in his first National Hockey League season and has just been in decline since then. Had a little burst after the trade and the ice time boost that he got when he became a Flame, but 1 goal through 28 games. Has been a healthy scratch a handful of times as well in Cowtown. So that's what the Canucks are up against next, is a game in Calgary on Tuesday. We'll see what they do, and again, we'll be monitoring whether Quinn Hughes and or Elias Pettersson back on the ice at practice, but based on what Rick Tocchet said post-game with no timelines, that certainly doesn't sound like you're going to see guys back with the group if they do skate on Sunday. All right, want to take a moment to tell you about our Boxing Day blowout here at the Nation Network until the 29th. Biggest sale of the year on Nation gear. Here is the deal. 20% off every single piece of Nation gear. Hoodies, tees, hats. It is all on sale. Plus, if you spend over $200, we're picking up the shipping. But don't wait on this one. The deals are on through the 29th. You can find everything you're looking for at nationgear.ca. Sharp looks, big savings, all of it at nationgear.ca. Busy Saturday as the National Hockey League gets back into some sort of regular rhythm after the holiday break. Games started on Friday. Canucks and the Kraken got after it here. They were early games. Montreal with a 4-0 shutout in Florida. That was the early game on this Saturday, but a bunch more to come, including the Flames at San Jose. That's the late game. That's the back half of Hockey Night in Canada. Other games still to come here this afternoon. Games involving Ottawa at Winnipeg, Pittsburgh and the New York Islanders. And then Flames and the Sharks are the standalone game. And I've mentioned them a few times, not just because the Canucks saw the Sharks before Christmas, and we'll see the Flames here shortly, but it's also going to be our line of the night as we take a look at our Bet365 line of the night here on Rink Wide Vancouver. Sharks played last night, lost to Colorado. This is the first game out of the Christmas break for the Calgary Flames. And we've seen a few teams here, and even the Canucks and the Kraken didn't really have it in the early going here. This is a time where playing back-to-back might actually work in San Jose's favor. Sharks may have to work off some of the turkey, may have to work off a little bit of rust as well. Sharks played and lost, and we'll see if they can get the jump on this Calgary team. I know it's been a struggle for San Jose of late, but I'm actually going to go against the grain here and take the Sharks. There is some value on the Sharks as the underdog at plus 245 on the money line here, so that's where I'm looking, and we'll see if the Sharks can do the Canucks a favor with a win over the Flames on home ice later on tonight. That is our line of the night, brought to you by Bet365. All right, lots of you upset in the chat. I understand why. This team has just been way too inconsistent all season long. Opportunities sitting there on a platter, and they couldn't knock it off the tee. And good teams get it done. It's as simple as that. And I think we're all still in the same boat of, what are the Vancouver Canucks? Are they a good team? They were last year, but last year was last year. And this is a different group now that has had to play without Thatcher Demko and JT Miller and Dakota Joshua and Brock Besser for a stretch, and now Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. Oh, yeah, Philip Hronek. Those are challenges, without a doubt. But when you do well to build a 4-1 lead on home ice, put it away. Just stick the knife in and get this thing done. And it's been an issue for this team. And that's where I go back to the inconsistency from game to game and really from period to period. And maybe it's the in-game inconsistency that is more the issue and probably more of a head-scratcher for Rick Tocchet. The Canucks looked really good in the second period. And then just sat back, and maybe they thought it was going to be easy, but it wasn't. And so just looking in the chat here, Lubu82, what happened to the attitude they had last year when they had a lead? They win more games when they trail in games this year. Yeah, that was one of the stats that we tracked last year so often, was their record when taking a lead to the third period, and they were nearly flawless. And already this year, we've seen a handful of teams, Calgary, Philadelphia, on the second game of the season. It was just a 1-goal deficit, but they came back and ultimately got a win there. This one as well. There have been a few others along the way. And the Canucks have shown some comebacks too. I think of the Carolina game at home. They lost in overtime, but they were down 3-1 in the third, down 2-0 to Columbus. They rallied. So, it does cut both ways here, but there have been too many examples of this team already this season, not even at the midway mark, where the Vancouver Canucks have scuffled along and ultimately haven't been able to put games to bed. So it's understandable. I get the frustration. I feel it too. And I want to see playoff hockey, and I'm not convinced as I sit here. I want to believe. I want to dare to dream. That was when I look back on my 2024, and we're getting to that point of the year now, year in review, seeing a lot of those types of things. As I reflect on 2024, the playoffs, the return of playoff hockey to Vancouver, the way this market embraced playoff hockey, the drama, the emotion, the passion that we saw at Rogers Arena, and I was lucky enough to go to Nashville and be there for that incredible comeback and overtime win. That game probably stands as my highlight of things that I saw with my own two eyes. Was fortunate enough to be at Bridgestone Arena. Also got to go to Edmonton and see the Canucks in the playoff games there as well. And so I want playoff hockey. I think most of you want playoff hockey, but ultimately it's on the Vancouver Canucks. And as we said, looking at results earlier today, the Los Angeles Kings pick up 2 points in that overtime win against the Edmonton Oilers. So the Oil get 1. The Kings take 2 more points. Vegas on an absolute heater and with just a ridiculously easy schedule right now. And they're getting Calgary on the back end of back-to-backs tomorrow. Vegas has won 5 in a row. Vegas has 51 points. Los Angeles and Edmonton are tied with 45 points. They've played the same number of games as the Canucks, and the Canucks have 42. So there's a 3-point gap there, and that comes back to the number of points that the Canucks have just completely whiffed on in overtime. And 3 or 4 of those points, the Canucks would be right there, button heads with the Oilers and the Kings. Instead, they're looking up at them, and really, the Canucks have to be looking over their shoulder. Dallas a single point back. Calgary is 3 back. Utah and St. Louis are 4 behind the Vancouver Canucks. And this win by the Kraken keeps them within striking distance. We talked about their struggles. They snapped a 5-game losing streak for them. They've got 34 points, and they've played 37 games. So they've played more hockey than just about everybody, and they're still a ways back of the playoff bar. But a good 2 points for the Seattle Kraken. And obviously the Canucks will take their single point, but it comes with an odor attached when you have a 4-1 lead. So frustrating, disappointing, and Canucks will have to stew on this thing for a couple of days now because they don't play until Tuesday when they play the Calgary Flames, and then after that, it is down to Seattle. So Flames are up next, and then a game in Seattle against the same Kraken, and we'll see how that goes for the Vancouver Canucks. Brock Besser with a pair up to 13 on the season. Connor Garland with his 9th, his first in a while, and Jake DeBrusque has been pretty consistent for the Canucks. Once he got rolling here out of the month of October, he's up to a team-high 16 goals after putting the Canucks up 4-1 early in the third period. But end of the day, the Kraken come roaring back, 4 unanswered, to win it by a score of 5-4. All right, a reminder to check out all of our content at Canucks Army. Quads he was at the rink today. He's got his instant reaction. We'll have the Stanchies and the Statsies. I'm working on a Monday mailbag as well. Have a Sunday column up at some point on Sunday as well, and then back to the rink for a practice for the Vancouver Canucks, and we'll see what they're working on and if Rick Tocchet is looking at experimenting with any kind of changes. Right now, they only have 12 healthy forwards, and so it's all hands on deck. And so you can tinker with the combinations, but in terms of inserting new legs or energy or anything like that, up front, they have no extra bodies. So we'll see at some point. Pettersson and or Hughes could go on IR, but fingers crossed that isn't the case. But it would take that for them to be able to bring anybody up from Abbotsford at this point. The only healthy body that was scratched in this game was Guillaume Brisebois getting his first look with the big team, practiced on Friday, but was a healthy scratch in this hockey game. All right, that is going to do it for us here. Appreciate you hanging with us here through the holiday break. We'll be back on New Year's Eve. Who's going to be with us on New Year's Eve? We'll do another solo episode. I may have some party favors and noisemakers. It's a 6 o'clock start Pacific time, 7 in Calgary. So we're going to be done, I would assume, well before midnight, even with Rink Wide. After the hockey game, I still think we'll be in before midnight. But if you're looking for the hottest New Year's Eve party in town, right here, Rink Wide Vancouver, after the Canucks and the Flames on Tuesday. My thanks to Jacob helping out behind the scenes, as he always does. And thanks to you for sticking with us here as the Seattle Kraken defeat the Vancouver Canucks by a score of 5-4. That's going to do it for this episode of Rink Wide Vancouver.